My name is Frank Miller. I'm a deputy with the county sheriff's department. But for the last 12 years, my post has been the courthouse. I'm the guy who stands by the door, the one who keeps order. It's mostly a boring job. The errand. Courtroom 3 always smells the same, a mix of old paper, cheap floor polish, and the faint, sad scent of desperation that clings to people like static. I've seen it all, or so I thought. I've seen hardened criminals who cry like babies and scared kids who try to act tough. I've learned to read people in a single glance, the slump of their shoulders, the twitch in their eye, the way they can't look Judge Thompson in the face. You get a sense for who's trouble and who's just had a string of bad luck. That Tuesday started like any other, a long list of minor offenses, traffic violations, public intoxication, a couple of petty thefts. I was leaning against the wall, half listening, my mind already on the lunch special at the diner down the street. Then they called her name, Sarah Jenkins. She walked up to the defendant's table, and my first thought was that she looked like a bird that had fallen from its nest. She was small, weary, with plain brown hair pulled back in a messy knot. She wore jeans and a faded gray sweatshirt that was a couple of sizes too big. She didn't look dangerous. She didn't look like anything, really. Just tired. Empty. The charge was failure to appear for a previous summons. A simple thing. But Judge Thompson hated it. He saw it as a direct insult to his court, to the whole system. He peered at her over his glasses. "Miss Jenkins," he said, his voice a low rumble that always made people shrink. "You were ordered to appear before this court 1 month ago. You did not. Do you have an explanation?" Sarah Jenkins just stood there. She didn't look at the judge. She stared at a spot on the far wall, just over my head. Her hands were tucked into the pockets of her sweatshirt. Her face was a perfect blank. "Miss Jenkins, I am speaking to you," the judge said, his voice sharper now. "The public defender." A young guy named Peterson, who always looked overwhelmed, leaned over and whispered something to her. She didn't react. It was like she wasn't even in the room. "I will ask you one more time," Judge Thompson said, his patience gone. "Why did you not appear?" Silence, a thick, heavy quiet that filled the entire courtroom. You could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights, the rustle of papers. I shifted my weight, the leather of my belt creaking. I felt a little spark of annoyance at her. "Just answer the man," I thought. "Make it easy on yourself. This isn't the place for silent protests." "Fine," the judge snapped, his gavel hitting the wood with a crack that made me jump. "I find you in contempt of court. Deputy Miller, take her into custody. She can spend the night in a cell and perhaps she'll find her voice by morning." My gut tightened a little. It was just a contempt charge, but I hated this part. I hated putting my hands on people who weren't violent, especially women. But it was an order. It was my job. I walked toward her, pulling the steel handcuffs from my belt, the familiar weight of them in my hand, the cold, smooth metal. "Ma'am," I said, my voice low and professional. "You heard the judge. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back." She finally moved. She turned to face me, and for the first time, her eyes met mine. And that's when I felt the first jolt that something was wrong. They weren't the eyes of a scared kid or a defiant punk. They were old, impossibly old. They were calm, steady, and so clear they looked right through me. There was no fear in them, no anger. There was just a stillness, a deep, profound stillness that was more unnerving than any scream or struggle. It was the kind of calm you see in the eye of a hurricane. She didn't say a word. She just slowly pulled her hands from her pockets and placed them behind her back. Her movements fluid and economical. There was no hesitation, no wasted motion. As I brought the cuffs around her wrists, I noticed her hands. They were slender, but the knuckles were scarred and the skin was rough, like she'd spent a lifetime working with them. Her wrists were so small the cuffs seemed to swallow them. I clicked the first cuff shut, then the second. The sound was loud in the quiet room. She didn't flinch. She just stood there, breathing evenly. "This way, ma'am," I said, gently touching her elbow to guide her. We walked out of the courtroom and down the hall toward the holding cells. My hand was on her arm, but it felt like I was the one being led. Her posture was perfect, head up, shoulders back. She walked with a quiet dignity that made the whole situation feel wrong. Like I was the one who had broken a law. The silence between us was heavier than any conversation. I put her in one of the small, concrete cells. The door clanged shut, and the lock echoed in the hallway. She didn't look at me. She just walked to the simple bench and sat down, her cuffed hands resting in her lap. She went back to staring at the wall, her expression as blank as it had been in the courtroom. I went back to my post, feeling unsettled. The image of her eyes was burned into my mind. I tried to shake it off. I'd seen all kinds. She was just another one, toughing it out. But I couldn't convince myself. About an hour later, things got strange. A man in a sharp, expensive-looking suit strode into the courthouse. He wasn't one of our local lawyers. He moved with an air of absolute authority, his eyes scanning everything like he was assessing threats. He went straight to the clerk's window. I could hear his voice, low and intense. A few minutes later, he was walking toward Courtroom 3 with our flustered public defender, Peterson, trailing behind him like a puppy. He entered the courtroom without knocking and walked right up to the judge's bench. Judge Thompson looked up, furious at the interruption. "Who are you? This is a closed session," the judge barked. The man in the suit didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The power coming off him was enough to silence the room. "My name is David Cole," he said. "I'm an attorney representing Chief Petty Officer Sarah Jenkins, and I'd like to know why my client, a decorated hero of the United States Navy, is currently sitting in one of your holding cells in handcuffs." The courtroom went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the worn linoleum floor. I felt a cold dread creep up my spine. Chief Petty Officer Judge Thompson blinked, his face a mixture of confusion and irritation. "Your client was held in contempt of this court." She refused to answer a simple question. A simple question. Cole's voice was dangerously soft. "Your Honor, did you bother to look at her file? Did you ask your public defender here why she might have had trouble speaking in a crowded, stressful room?" He turned his head slightly and glared at Peterson, who looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. "Her file just said she had a veteran status," Peterson stammered. "I tried to talk to her. She wouldn't say much." Cole turned back to the judge. "Your Honor, my client, Sarah Jenkins, isn't just a veteran. She served 3 tours in Afghanistan. She was a sniper with the Navy SEALs." A collective gasp went through the few people left in the courtroom. I felt the breath leave my own body. My mind reeled, trying to connect the image of that small, quiet woman with the words Navy SEAL sniper. It didn't compute. It was like someone telling you a sparrow was actually an eagle. But then it started to click. The stillness, the calm, steady eyes, the way she moved with no wasted energy, the way she accepted the handcuffs without a trace of fear. It wasn't defiance. It was discipline. It was control, forged in places I couldn't even imagine. The lawyer, Cole, wasn't finished. His voice was filled with a cold, righteous anger. For 6 years, she laid in the dust for hours, sometimes days at a time, protecting her unit. She saved dozens of American lives. The reason she missed her last court date is because she was at AVA Hospital in another state, undergoing intensive treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder. The summons was sent to an old address. She never even saw it. He let that hang in the air for a moment. I felt sick. My hand, the one I'd used to guide her, felt dirty. I had put handcuffs on a hero. I had treated her like a common criminal because she looked small and wore a baggy sweatshirt. The reason she was silent today, Cole continued, his voice dropping even lower, is because her PTSD is triggered by loud, enclosed spaces and direct, confrontational questions from authority figures. It can cause dissociative episodes. She wasn't disrespecting you, Your Honor. She was fighting a battle in her own mind that is more terrifying than anything that will ever happen in this courtroom. She was trying not to fall apart in front of all of you. Judge Thompson's face had gone pale. The usual arrogance was gone, replaced by a look of stunned, horrified realization. He looked from the lawyer to me, and I saw the same shame I felt reflected in his eyes. He had been a Marine in his youth. I knew that, and I knew what he was thinking. He cleared his throat. His voice was hoarse when he spoke. "Mr. Cole, I was not aware He looked down at his hands, then back up. "Deputy Miller," he said, and his voice was gentle now. "Go and release Miss Jenkins immediately. Bring her back in here. And deputy, take the damn cuffs off before you do." I practically ran out of the courtroom. My heart was pounding in my chest, a frantic drum of guilt and shame. I fumbled with the keys to the holding cell, my hands shaking. The lock turned with a loud click. I opened the door. She was sitting in the exact same position, staring at the wall. She turned her head slowly as I entered. Those same calm eyes watched me. "Ma'am," I said, my voice cracking. I'm here to take the cuffs off. The judge has dismissed the charge." I knelt in front of her. It felt like the right thing to do. I was no longer an officer of the court asserting authority. I was just a man, trying to undo a terrible mistake. The key slid into the lock on the handcuffs. As the steel sprang open, I saw the red marks it had left on her thin wrists. I felt a wave of disgust at myself. "I am so sorry," I whispered. I wasn't just apologizing for the handcuffs. I was apologizing for my judgment, for my ignorance, for the whole sorry mess. She flexed her fingers, rubbing her wrists. She looked at me, and for the first time, a flicker of something else crossed her face. Not forgiveness, not anger, just a deep, weary understanding. "It's okay," she said. Her voice was quiet, a little rough from disuse. "You were just doing your job." Her words didn't make me feel better. They made me feel worse, because she was right. I was just doing my job, but I had done it without thought, without compassion, without seeing the person in front of me. I had just seen a file, a charge, a problem to be processed. We walked back to the courtroom together. This time, I walked beside her, not behind her. When we entered, everyone stood up. The lawyer, the clerk, the other deputy. Even Judge Thompson rose from his high-backed chair. It was a spontaneous, unspoken gesture of respect. Judge Thompson came down from his bench. He walked right up to her. He was a big man, and she looked even smaller standing in front of him. "Chief, Petty Officer Jenkins," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "on behalf of this court, and as a former serviceman, I offer you my deepest, most sincere apology. What happened here today was in failure of the system I represent. It was my failure. I hope you can forgive us." Sarah Jenkins just gave a small, slight nod. That was all. She didn't need grand apologies. Her lawyer put a hand on her shoulder. "We're done here, Sarah. Let's go." As she turned to leave, her eyes met mine one last time. She gave me that same small nod, a gesture of closure. Then she was gone, walking out of the courthouse with the same quiet dignity she'd had when she walked in. I stood there for a long time after she left. The courtroom felt different. The air was still thick with the smell of old paper and floor polish, but something had changed. I had changed. I no longer feel like I've seen it all. I realize now I've seen almost nothing. I'd spent 12 years looking at people and seeing only their charges, their clothes, their attitudes. But that day, I was forced to see a person, a whole, complex person with a story I couldn't possibly guess from a single glance. A woman who looked fragile but possessed a strength I could barely comprehend. Now, when someone stands before the judge, I don't just see a defendant. I see a mystery. I wonder what battles they're fighting that I can't see. I look at their hands and wonder what they've built or broken. I look into their eyes and wonder what they've seen. I still wear the uniform and carry the cuffs, but they feel different now, heavier. A reminder that the easiest thing in the world is to judge, and the hardest thing is to understand. A reminder of the quiet woman with the sniper's eyes, who taught me that the deepest scars are the ones we can't see.